The warning came without mercy. Ambassador Rachel Foster stood in the observation deck of humanity's first diplomatic vessel, watching as the massive structure grew larger in the viewport. The Nexus, the seat of power for the Galactic Assembly, a station so vast that entire moons orbited within its artificial gravity wells. She had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach this place. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, studying briefing materials, preparing arguments, practicing her speech. 3 weeks knowing that Earth's future depended on what happened. In the next few hours, the message had arrived 6 months. Go. Simple. Direct. Terrifying. Species. 7,291. Classification. Human. Origin. Sol 3. Are summoned to the Nexus for categorical review. Failure to appear will result in automatic sanction level 9. No appeal permitted. It took humanity's best linguists 2 months to fully translate the message. When they finally understood, the panic began. Sanction level 9 meant extinction. Complete erasure. Not just of humanity, but of every trace that humans had ever existed. Rachel pressed her hand against the cold viewport. Somewhere behind her, 60 light-years away, Earth continued its rotation. 4 billion people who had no idea their species was about to be judged by beings they had never met. The docking procedure took an hour. Rachel used the time to review her notes one final time. She was 42 years old. She had served as Earth's ambassador to the United Nations for 8 years. She spoke 7 languages. She had negotiated peace treaties, trade agreements, and crisis resolutions. None of that mattered now. She was about to face something far beyond human politics. The airlock opened. 2 beings stood waiting. They were tall, nearly 3 meters, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their faces had no features Rachel could recognize. No eyes, no mouth. Just smooth surfaces that somehow conveyed displeasure. "Follow," one of them said. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. They led her through corridors that defied geometry. Walls curved in directions that should not exist. Gravity shifted with each step. Lights pulsed in colors Rachel had no names for. She focused on walking, on breathing, on not collapsing from sheer sensory overload. Then the doors opened, and Rachel forgot how to breathe at all. The assembly chamber was infinite. That was the only word for it. The ceiling stretched upward forever, disappearing into darkness, pierced by stars that might have been real or might have been lights. The floor was transparent, showing the void of space below, making Rachel feel as if she were floating in nothing. And everywhere, in rising tiers that circled the chamber like a coliseum, were the delegates. Thousands of them. Beings of every shape and form Rachel could imagine, and many she could not. Some were massive, larger than Earth's whales. Some were tiny, barely visible even from where she stood. Some looked almost human. Others looked like nothing that should exist in a sane universe. All of them were looking at her at the center of the chamber. Suspended in the air by forces Rachel could not comprehend was a sphere of pure light. It pulsed with each second, and with each pulse, Rachel felt something touch her mind. A presence, ancient, powerful, utterly alien. Human, the sphere spoke. The voice was not sound. It was thought, placed directly into her consciousness. You stand before the Galactic Assembly. 9,000 species, 42,000 worlds, 177,000 years of collective civilization. Rachel tried to speak. Her voice came out as a whisper. I am Ambassador Rachel Foster. I represent humanity. I come in peace. Laughter. Not cruel, but not kind either. The sound of beings who found her words amusing in the way an adult might find a child's declaration amusing. The sphere pulsed brighter. You speak of peace. Yet our observers report that your species has engaged in continuous warfare for your entire recorded history. You speak of representation, yet your world is divided into hundreds of competing factions. You speak of coming in peace, yet you have developed weapons capable of destroying your own planet. Images appeared in the air around Rachel. Scenes from Earth's history. Wars, genocides, nuclear explosions, environmental destruction. Everything humanity had ever done wrong, displayed for thousands of alien species to witness. The Assembly has reviewed your species, the sphere continued. We have studied your culture, your biology, your psychology, your potential. A pause. The chamber was absolutely silent. We have determined that humanity poses a contamination risk to galactic civilization. Your species displays patterns consistent with cascade aggression syndrome. If allowed to expand beyond your system, you will inevitably bring conflict to peaceful worlds. You will destabilize established order. You will cause suffering on a scale we cannot permit. Rachel felt her legs shaking. She forced herself to stand straight. Therefore, the sphere said, the Assembly has placed humanity on the remediation list. You are the 47th species to receive this designation. Earth will be quarantined. No travel beyond your solar system will be permitted. Any attempt to leave will result in immediate sanction level 9. For how long? Rachel managed to ask. Until your species evolves beyond its violent tendencies. Our projections suggest approximately 15,000 of your years. Perhaps longer. 15,000 years. Humanity locked in its own solar system for 600 generations. Unable to explore. Unable to expand. Unable to reach for the stars. Rachel felt something break inside her. Not hope. Not courage. Something deeper. Something that had sustained her through the 3-week journey. The belief that words could solve this. That diplomacy could save them. She had been wrong. But as she stood there, surrounded by thousands of alien beings, watched by a consciousness older than human civilization, something else rose to replace what had broken. Anger. No, Rachel said. The chamber stirred. Whispers in 1,000 languages. The sphere pulsed, almost seeming surprised. You refuse the Assembly's judgment? I refuse to let you imprison my species for crimes we have not committed. I refuse to accept that humanity's future should be decided by beings who have never walked on Earth, never met our people, never understood what we truly are. Rachel stepped forward. The transparent floor beneath her feet showed the infinite void below. She did not look down. You have judged us based on our past. You have looked at our wars and concluded we are violent. You have looked at our divisions and concluded we are chaotic. You have looked at our weapons and concluded we are dangerous. She was shaking now, but not from fear, from fury, from the pure, burning certainty that she was about to say something that would either save humanity or doom it forever. But you have made one critical mistake in your assessment. The sphere pulsed. Explain. Rachel smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who held a card no one knew existed. You assumed that humanity wants to join your civilization. You assumed we came here hoping to be accepted. You assumed we need your permission to reach the stars. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. We do not. She pressed the button dot in every screen in the assembly. Chamber lit up with the same image. A fleet. Hundreds of human ships. Not the primitive vessels the assembly's observers had reported. Not the crude rockets and stations they had dismissed as harmless. Warships. Advanced. Armed. Hidden throughout the solar system. Built in secret over decades. Waiting for exactly this moment. Earth was next on your list, Rachel said quietly. But we have decided to remove ourselves from consideration. The chamber erupted into chaos. and Rachel Foster stood at the center of the storm, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. 18 months earlier, Earth. Antarctica. Dr. James Park stood at the entrance to a facility that did not exist on any map. The ice stretched in every direction, pristine and empty. Or so it appeared. Beneath his feet, buried under 3 kilometers of ice, was humanity's greatest secret. He had been summoned here by a message marked with security clearance levels he did not know existed. The message had contained only coordinates and a single sentence. We need to talk about the visitors. The visitors. That was what they called them. The beings who had been watching Earth for the past 30 years. James entered the facility through an elevator that descended for 15 minutes. When the doors finally opened, he stepped into a complex that rivaled the size of a small city. Laboratories, living quarters, manufacturing facilities, all of it hidden beneath the ice, built in absolute secrecy by a coalition of nations that officially hated each other. General Patricia Cruz waited for him in the central command room. She was American, 60 years old, and her face carried the weight of too many sleepless nights. Dr. Park, thank you for coming. James nodded. He was Korean, a physicist who specialized in propulsion systems. He had spent the last decade teaching at universities, publishing papers, living a normal life. He had no idea why he was here. 3 weeks ago, Patricia began without preamble, we received a transmission from the beings who have been observing us. They call themselves the Galactic Assembly. They have invited humanity to their headquarters for what they call a categorical review. She pulled up a holographic display. The message appeared, translated into English. James read it carefully. His face went pale. Sanction level 9, he whispered. That sounds bad. It means extinction. Complete erasure of our species. Patricia's voice was flat. P. Professional. But James could hear the fear beneath it. We have 3 months to prepare. 3 months to figure out how to convince 9,000 alien species that humanity deserves to exist. James sat down slowly. Why me? I am a physicist. I do not do diplomacy. Patricia smiled grimly. Because you are the lead designer of Project Exodus. And Project Exodus is the only reason we still have hope. She gestured, and the hologram changed. James saw ships. Dozens of them. Sleek, powerful, nothing like the crude spacecraft that humanity used for its public space program. For 30 years, Patricia said, we have known the visitors were watching us. For 30 years, we prepared for the day they might decide we were a threat. Every nation on Earth contributed. Russia, China, America, Europe, even countries that were, supposedly, at war with each other. We built this facility. We developed these ships. We created technology that the visitors do not know we possess. James stared at the ships. He recognized his own designs. The engines he had spent 15 years perfecting. The weapon systems he had helped create, believing they were theoretical research projects. You lied to me, he said quietly. All those years. You told me it was theoretical. We told everyone it was theoretical. We could not risk the visitors learning what we were building. They monitor our communications. They watch our progress. But they underestimate us. They see our public space program and assume that is all we are capable of. They do not realize what we have hidden. Patricia leaned forward. Ambassador Rachel Foster is being sent to the assembly. She is brilliant. She is diplomatic. She is our best hope for negotiating a peaceful solution. She paused. But if negotiation fails, we need a backup plan. We need them to understand that humanity will not go quietly into extinction. James understood. You want me to weaponize hope. I want you to give Rachel something she can use. A demonstration. proof that humanity is not as helpless as the assembly believes. Over the following weeks, James worked with a team of scientists from 20 different countries. They refined the ships. They tested the weapons. They prepared for a scenario they all prayed would never happen. But they also prepared something else, something that would serve as Rachel's trump card. Dr. Lisa Wang, a Chinese engineer, approached James on the 43rd day. She looked exhausted. "The remote broadcasting system is complete," she said. "We can transmit live footage from any of our ships directly to Rachel's location. The assembly will not be able to block it or interfere with it. We use technology based on their own communication protocols." James looked at the technical specifications. "This is brilliant. How did you figure out their protocols?" Lisa smiled sadly. "We have been studying them for 30 years. We know more about the assembly than they realize." As the launch date approached, James found himself thinking about the morality of what they were doing. Humanity was preparing for war with a civilization that had existed for nearly 200,000 years. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was also their only chance. Rachel Foster visited the facility 2 weeks before her departure. James gave her a tour, showing her the ships, explaining the technology, demonstrating what humanity had achieved in secret. She listened carefully, asking intelligent questions, absorbing everything. When the tour ended, she stood in the observation deck, looking at the assembled fleet through reinforced windows. "Can we win?" she asked quietly. James considered the question. "Win? No. If it comes to war, we lose. The assembly has technology thousands of years beyond ours. They have billions of soldiers. They control most of the galaxy. Then why build all this? Because losing does not mean surrendering. Because if they decide to erase humanity, we can make sure they remember us. We can make sure they understand that erasing us will cost them dearly." Rachel turned to face him. Mutually assured destruction. On a galactic scale, yes. She was quiet for a long moment. "I will try to negotiate. I will try to convince them that humanity deserves a chance. But if that fails, James finished, "you show them the fleet. You show them what we have been building. You make them understand that humanity prepared for this day, that we anticipated their judgment, that we refused to accept it." Rachel nodded slowly. "And if they still insist on quarantining us, on locking humanity in our own solar system for 15,000 years? James smiled grimly. "Then we break the quarantine. We expand anyway, and we dare them to stop us." The day Rachel departed, James stood in the command center, watching her ship leave Earth orbit. Around him, technicians monitored thousands of data streams. Every ship in the hidden fleet was on standby. Every weapon system was primed. Every soldier was ready. General Patricia Cruz stood beside him. "Do you think she can do it?" she asked. "I think she is our best hope. Smart, courageous, unwilling to accept defeat. And if she fails?" James looked at the screens showing the hidden fleet. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of crew members. All of them volunteers who understood they might never return home. "If she fails," he said quietly, "then we show the galaxy what humanity does when cornered. We fight. We resist. We refuse to die quietly." Patricia nodded. Earth was next on their list. "Not anymore," James replied. "Now we make our own list." 3 weeks later, James received the signal. Rachel had arrived at the Nexus. The assembly had delivered its judgment. Humanity was to be quarantined for 15,000 years. Rachel had just activated the broadcasting device. The fleet appeared on every screen in the assembly chamber. Hundreds of human warships emerging from hiding, revealing themselves to thousands of alien species who had thought humanity was primitive and helpless. James watched the reaction feeds. Chaos, confusion, fear. Good, he thought. Let them be afraid. Let them understand that humanity will not be caged. General Cruz looked at him. Orders? James took a deep breath. Everything came down to this moment. One wrong decision, and humanity would be exterminated. One right decision, and they might survive. Send a message to the fleet, he said. Activate weapon systems. Block targeting solutions on the Nexus station. Do not fire unless fired upon. But make sure they know we can fire. Patricia smiled. Making them afraid? Making them think twice. Making them understand that erasing humanity means starting a war. And even if they win that war, it will cost them. On the screens, he watched as Rachel Foster stood alone in the assembly chamber, surrounded by thousands of hostile aliens. Delivering a message that would change everything. She was magnificent, fearless, defiant. She was human. And James knew, watching her, that whatever happened next, humanity would never be the same. They had looked at an ancient galactic empire and said no. They had refused to be judged by those who did not understand them. Now they would face the consequences. Together. The chaos lasted exactly 8 minutes. Rachel watched as thousands of delegates erupted into arguments, their voices creating a cacophony that overwhelmed her translation implant. Some were shouting demands for immediate military action. Others were calling for emergency security protocols. A few, she noticed, were simply staring at the images of human warships with what looked like respect. The sphere of light at the center of the chamber pulsed once. Silence fell instantly. Human, the sphere said, and Rachel could hear something new in its telepathic voice. Not fear, exactly, but uncertainty. You have concealed military assets. You have violated our observation protocols. You have deceived the assembly. Rachel forced herself to remain calm. Every word mattered now. Every gesture. Every expression. With respect, we have not violated any protocols. The assembly observed us. You saw what we wanted you to see. We never agreed to reveal everything about our capabilities. You assumed our public space program represented our true technological level. That was your error, not our deception. A new voice entered her mind, different from the sphere, colder. I am Arbitrator Thane, third seat of the assembly. For 200,000 years, species have come before us with honesty, with openness, with the understanding that the assembly's wisdom exceeds their own. A figure emerged from one of the upper tiers. It was massive, easily 5 meters tall, with crystalline skin that refracted light in painful directions. Its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed with an inner fire. You come before us with weapons, Thane continued, with threats, with the arrogance of a species that has existed for barely a moment in galactic terms. Do you truly believe your primitive ships pose any threat to us? Rachel met the being's gaze without flinching. Arbitrator Thane, I do not know if our ships pose a threat. I am not a military strategist. I am a diplomat. But I know this. Those ships exist. They are armed. They are positioned throughout our solar system. And their orders are clear. If Earth is attacked, they will respond. She gestured at the images still displayed around the chamber. You spoke of honesty. Let me be honest with you. Humanity does not want war. We came here hoping for dialogue, for understanding, for the chance to prove we can coexist with galactic civilization. But we also came prepared, because we have learned, through painful experience, that hope is not a strategy, that peace requires strength, that survival requires being willing to fight for it. Another voice, gentler this time, a being that looked almost human, with features. That reminded Rachel of sculptures she had seen in museums. Ancient, Noble, I am Counselor Arya. I have studied your species for many years. I find your development fascinating. But I must ask, Ambassador Foster, what do you truly want? If not to join our civilization, if not to accept our guidance, what is your purpose here? Rachel took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for. The speech she had rehearsed 1,000 times. Counselor Arya, we want what every species wants. The freedom to grow, to explore, to determine our own destiny. You have offered us quarantine, 15,000 years of isolation. You call it protection. We call it imprisonment. She looked around the vast chamber at the thousands of beings watching her. Humanity rejects your quarantine. We will continue to expand beyond our solar system. We will explore. We will establish colonies. We will reach for the stars, because that is what we do. That is what defines us. The chamber erupted again. Shouts of outrage. Demands for immediate sanctions. Calls for military intervention, but Rachel was not finished. However, she said, her voice cutting through the noise, we understand your concerns. You fear that humanity will bring violence to peaceful worlds, that we will destabilize your civilization, that we pose a contamination risk. She pulled out a data chip and held it up. This contains a proposal, a compromise. Humanity will agree to limitations on our expansion. We will submit to regular inspections. We will accept observers on our colonies. We will even agree to restricted zones where we will not travel. She paused. In exchange, you will recognize our sovereignty. You will acknowledge our right to exist beyond Earth. You will treat us not as children to be controlled, but as neighbors to be respected. The sphere pulsed, considering. And if we refuse your proposal, then we expand anyway. And you will have to decide how much you are willing to sacrifice to stop us. Arbitrator Thane descended from the upper tier, moving with surprising grace for something so large. It stopped directly in front of Rachel, towering over her. You are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, human. Possibly both. Do you understand what you are risking? The Assembly could erase your species with a single command. Your ships, your weapons, your entire civilization, all gone in moments. Rachel looked up at the massive being. Yes, I understand. But you need to understand something as well. Humanity has faced extinction before. We have survived ice ages that killed most life on our planet. We have survived plagues that wiped out half our population. We have survived nuclear weapons aimed at our own cities. She stepped closer to Thane, despite her instincts screaming at her to retreat. We survive because we refuse to give up. Because we fight even when fighting seems hopeless. Because we believe that existence, even difficult existence, is better than oblivion. She pulled out the data chip again. This proposal represents our best effort at compromise, at finding a path that allows both humanity and the Assembly to coexist. I urge you to consider it carefully, because the alternative benefits no one. For a long moment, Thane stared down at her. Then the being made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been something else entirely. You remind me of the Korthan. They were species number 43 on the remediation list. They also refused quarantine. They also believed they could challenge the Assembly. Thane paused. They no longer exist. We sanctioned them. Completely. Their worlds are empty now. Their name is spoken only as a warning to others who might consider defiance. Rachel felt ice in her stomach, but she kept her voice steady. And how many Korthan did you have to kill before they stopped fighting? How much did that victory cost you? Thane was silent. That is what I thought, Rachel said softly. You won. But it hurt. It cost you resources, time, lives. And humanity has 3 advantages the Korthan did not. She held up one finger. First, we have had 30 years to prepare. To study you. to understand your tactics and your technology. A second finger. Second, we are willing to use tactics you consider dishonorable. Guerrilla warfare. Asymmetric responses. We will make occupation impossible. We will make victory meaningless. A third finger. Third, we have nothing to lose. The Korthan presumably wanted to preserve their civilization. We already face extinction, according to your judgment. If we fight with the desperation of beings who have already been condemned. She lowered her hand. Or you could accept our proposal. Acknowledge our sovereignty. Allow us controlled expansion. And gain a potential ally instead of a permanent enemy. The sphere pulsed again, brighter this time. The assembly will deliberate on your proposal. You will be confined to guest quarters during this time. The deliberation will take no less than 3 days. Rachel nodded. She had expected this dot as guards moved to escort her away. Counselor Arya approached. Ambassador Foster, the being said quietly, you have done something remarkable today. You have made the assembly uncertain. We have not felt uncertainty in many thousands of years. Is that good or bad? Rachel asked. Arya smiled. It was an unsettling expression on the alien features. I do not know. But it is interesting. And interesting is far better than predictable. Rachel was led through endless corridors to a suite of rooms that would serve as her prison for the next 3 days. The quarters were luxurious, but she could feel the force fields humming in the walls. She was not a guest. She was a hostage. She sat by a viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 60 light years away, Earth continued its rotation. Her family was there. Her friends. 4 billion people who were depending on her. She had played her hand. Revealed the fleet. Delivered her ultimatum. Now she could only wait and see if it had been enough. In her pocket, the data chip felt heavy. The proposal had taken months to write. Hundreds of politicians, scientists, and military leaders had contributed to it. It represented humanity's genuine attempt at compromise, but Rachel knew something the chip did not contain. Another message. Another option. The final card that humanity would play if negotiation failed. She prayed she would never have to use it. 3 days. 3 days to learn if humanity would survive. 3 days to learn if her gamble had paid off. 3 days to discover whether Earth would remain on their list, or whether humanity would write its own future. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, the real negotiations would begin. The first day of deliberation passed in silence. Rachel spent the time reviewing everything she knew about the assembly. The data recovered from their observation probes. The cultural analyses. The political structures. Everything humanity had learned in 30 years of secret study. The assembly was not a democracy. It was not a dictatorship. It was something older, more complex. A consensus of civilizations that had learned to cooperate through necessity. 9,000 species, each with their own interests, their own fears, their own agendas. That was humanity's advantage. The assembly was not a monolith. It could be fractured, influenced, changed. On the second day, Counselor Arya visited her. The being entered the quarters without ceremony, moving with that same unsettling grace. It sat across from Rachel, studying her with eyes that seemed to see more than they should. The deliberation is not going well for you, Arya said simply. Rachel felt her stomach tighten. Explain. The majority of delegates want to reject your proposal. They view it as extortion, as a primitive species holding the galaxy hostage. Arbitrator Thane has called for immediate military action, for a demonstration of strength that will discourage other species from similar defiance. Rachel forced herself to breathe. And you? What do you want? Arya was quiet for a moment, its expression thoughtful. I want to understand. For 200,000 years, I have watched species come before the assembly. Some beg for mercy. Some accept judgment with dignity. Some resist, but always briefly, always futilely. You are different. You came prepared for rejection. You anticipated our response. You planned for war before we even issued our judgment. The being leaned forward. Why? What drives humanity to such extremes? What makes you willing to risk everything? Rachel thought carefully before answering. Counselor, has your species ever faced extinction? Real, absolute extinction? Not as a possibility, but as an imminent certainty? No. My people evolved on a world without natural predators. We achieved civilization without the trauma of survival. Then you cannot understand. Humanity evolved in a hostile environment. We faced predators that hunted us, diseases that killed us, climate changes that nearly erased us. For hundreds of thousands of years, we lived on the edge of extinction. We survived by being adaptable, by being willing to do whatever was necessary. Rachel stood and walked to the viewport. You see our violence and conclude we are dangerous. But our violence is simply our survival instinct expressed through advanced technology. We do not fight because we enjoy it. We fight because we have learned that the universe does not care about fairness. That survival requires strength. That peace is only possible when you are too dangerous to attack. So you threaten us to achieve peace? We threaten you to achieve respect. To make you understand that humanity will not be dismissed, will not be quarantined, will not accept judgment from beings who have never struggled for survival. Arya stood and moved to join Rachel at the viewport. There is a faction within the assembly that agrees with you. Small, but growing. They believe that humanity represents something the assembly needs. Fresh perspective, new ideas, the willingness to challenge established order. And the others? The others believe you represent everything the assembly was created to prevent: chaos, violence, the destabilization of galactic civilization. Arya turned to face Rachel. Tomorrow, the assembly will vote on your proposal. If it passes, humanity will be granted limited sovereignty. If it fails, Arbitrator Thane will order an immediate military response. Your fleet will be destroyed. Earth will be quarantined by force. How many votes do we need? 6,000 of 9,000 delegates must approve. Currently, we estimate you have 3,000 supporters. Perhaps 4,000 if certain undecided delegates can be convinced. Rachel felt the weight of the numbers. They were short. Far too short. Is there anything I can do? Any argument I have not made? Arya hesitated, then spoke carefully. There is one thing. The assembly respects strength, but it also respects sacrifice. If humanity could demonstrate that you are willing to give something up, not just demand concessions, it might shift opinion. What kind of sacrifice? That is for you to determine. But it must be meaningful. It must show that humanity understands cooperation requires compromise from both sides. After Arya left, Rachel sat in the darkness, thinking, what could humanity offer? What did they have that the assembly would value enough to change 6,000 minds? She pulled out her communication device and sent a heavily encrypted message back to Earth, to General Cruz, to Dr. Park, to everyone who had planned for this moment. Need options. Assembly vote tomorrow. Currently short 3,000 votes. Arya suggests we demonstrate willingness to sacrifice. What can we offer? The response came 6 hours later. Rachel read it 3 times, feeling a mixture of horror and admiration. Dr. Park had found an answer. Something humanity could sacrifice that would prove they were serious about cooperation. But the cost was staggering. She spent the rest of the night preparing her final speech. The one that would either save humanity or seal their fate. The next morning, guards escorted her back to the assembly chamber. The vast room was filled to capacity. Every delegate present, every species watching. The sphere of light pulsed at the center, and Rachel could feel its attention focused entirely on her. "Ambassador Foster," the sphere announced, "the Assembly has deliberated. We will now hear final statements before the vote. You may speak." Rachel walked to the center of the chamber, to the transparent floor that showed the infinite void below. She thought about Earth, about her daughter, who was 7 years old and wanted to be an astronaut, about the 4 billion people who depended on her next words. "Members of the Assembly," she began, her voice steady despite her fear. "You have spent 3 days discussing humanity's proposal. You have debated our worthiness, our potential, our danger. I do not know what you have decided. But before you vote, I want to offer you something that was not in the original proposal." She pulled out a data chip, different from the first one. "This chip contains the complete specifications for humanity's faster-than-light drive, the technology that allows our ships to travel between stars. We developed it in secret over the past 20 years. It is more efficient than any FTL system currently used by the Assembly, more reliable, easier to manufacture." The chamber stirred with interest. "We offer this technology freely, not in exchange for votes, not as a bribe, but as proof that humanity can contribute to galactic civilization, that we have value beyond our ability to fight." Arbitrator Thane's voice cut through the murmurs. "Why would you give us your most advanced military technology?" "That seems foolish," Rachel smiled. "Because we believe in the principle you claim to uphold. That cooperation benefits everyone. That sharing knowledge advances civilization. And because we understand that trust must be earned." She held up the chip. "This is our sacrifice, our demonstration of good faith. We are giving you the means to match our ship's capabilities. We are voluntarily eliminating our technological advantage. We are trusting that you will honor our proposal in return." The sphere pulsed, brighter than ever before. "You would make yourselves vulnerable? You would give us the power to pursue your ships anywhere they go?" "Yes, because we believe that once you truly understand us, once you see what humanity can offer, you will recognize that we are not a threat. We are a potential ally, a species that can bring new ideas, new perspectives, new possibilities to the Assembly." Rachel lowered the chip. "Earth was next on your list. But we do not want to be a list item. We want to be partners, equals, fellow travelers in the great work of building a better galaxy." She paused. "Vote however you think is right. But know that humanity has shown you our weapons and our technology. We have held nothing back. We have trusted you with everything we are. Now we ask that you trust us in return." The silence that followed was absolute. And the sphere spoke. "The Assembly will now vote. Delegates, register your decision." Rachel stood in the center of the chamber, watching as thousands of beings made the choice that would determine humanity's future. Lights flickered across the tiers, some green, some red, each one a vote for or against her species. The counting took 10 minutes. When it finished, his sphere pulsed once. "The vote is complete. 6,247 delegates approve humanity's proposal. 2,753 delegates oppose. The remainder abstain." Rachel felt her legs weaken. They had done it. Barely. But they had done it. "Humanity is granted limited sovereignty," the sphere continued. "You may expand beyond your solar system under the terms outlined in your proposal. The Assembly will establish observation posts in your colonies. Inspections will occur annually. Violations will result in immediate sanctions." The sphere pulsed again. "Welcome to galactic civilization, Ambassador Foster. May you prove worthy of the trust we have placed in you." Rachel looked up at the thousands of delegates. Some looked pleased. Some looked angry. Most looked uncertain. She did not care. She had done what seemed impossible. She had saved Earth 2 years later. The Nexus, assembly chamber. Rachel Foster stood at the edge of the vast room, watching as a new species faced their categorical review. They were called the Draven, small beings with 6 limbs and skin that changed color with their emotions. They had achieved faster-than-light travel just 8 months ago. Now they stood where Rachel had once stood, terrified and uncertain, facing the judgment of thousands of alien species. She remembered that feeling. The absolute certainty that everything was about to end. The desperate hope that somehow, impossibly, she could say the right words to save her people. Arbitrator Thane descended from the upper tiers. The massive crystalline being still intimidated Rachel, even after 2 years of working alongside it. Old habits. Species designation Draven, Thane announced. You have been observed. You have been evaluated. The Assembly has determined that your species shows potential for integration into galactic civilization. The Draven delegation trembled. Their leader, a being whose name translated roughly as Swift Wind, stepped forward. We are honored, Swift Wind said in a voice that shook. We wish only to learn, to grow, to find our place among the stars. Rachel watched from her position near the lower tiers. She was no longer a visitor here. She was Earth's permanent representative to the Assembly. One of 9,000 delegates who shaped galactic policy. The vote had changed everything, not just for humanity, but for the Assembly itself. The acceptance of humanity's proposal had established a precedent. For the first time in the Assembly's history, a species had negotiated their own terms, had challenged the established order and won. Other species had noticed dot in the 2 years since that vote. 17 new species had approached the Assembly with their own proposals. Some were accepted. Some were modified. But all of them were negotiated, not dictated. The age of automatic sanctions was ending. Counselor Arya appeared beside Rachel, moving with that characteristic grace. They remind you of yourself, yes? Arya said quietly. Yes, terrified, hoping for mercy. Not yet understanding that they have more power than they realize. Will you speak for them? Rachel considered the question. The Draven were peaceful. Their history showed minimal conflict. They had developed space travel through cooperation rather than competition. By traditional Assembly standards, they were ideal candidates for membership. No, she said finally. They do not need my advocacy. They will be accepted on their own merits. Arya made a sound of approval. You have learned wisdom. Not every species needs a champion. Some simply need time to prove themselves. The vote proceeded quickly. The Draven were granted provisional membership with minimal restrictions. Swift Wind collapsed in relief, supported by fellow delegates who congratulated them on their acceptance. After the session, Rachel returned to her quarters on the Nexus. They were permanent now, not a prison but a home. She had spent more time here than on Earth over the past 2 years, helping to navigate the complex politics of 9,000 species. Her communication console chimed. A message from Earth, from Jean. Ral Cruz, Ambassador, we have completed construction of humanity's second colony. New Terra is now home to 50,000 people. The Assembly observers report no violations of our agreement. Thought you would want to know. Rachel smiled. New Terra, humanity's first world beyond Earth, a planet 20 light years away, orbiting a sun similar to Sol, a place where humans could build something new. There were plans for more colonies. 5 more systems had been approved by the Assembly. Humanity was expanding, carefully and deliberately, proving that they could grow without destabilizing galactic civilization. And the FTL technology she had shared? The Assembly had integrated it into their own ships. Travel times across the galaxy had been reduced by 40%. Trade had increased. Communication had improved. Humanity's contribution had benefited everyone. That night, Rachel was summoned to a private meeting with the Sphere of Light, the central consciousness of the assembly, the entity that had nearly condemned humanity to extinction. "Ambassador Foster," the Sphere said, its telepathic voice gentler than she remembered. "I wanted to speak with you before you return to Earth tomorrow." "Of course. What do you wish to discuss?" "I want to thank you." Rachel blinked in surprise. "Thank me? For what?" "For challenging us. For refusing to accept our judgment. For forcing the assembly to confront the reality that our methods had become stagnant, that we had forgotten how to evolve." The sphere pulsed softly. "For 200,000 years, we ruled through fear and certainty. We knew what was best for every species. We never doubted our wisdom. We never questioned our methods. And now? Now we question everything. The Draven are the 18th species to negotiate their entry terms in the past 2 years. Each negotiation teaches us something new. Each compromise reveals possibilities we never considered. The assembly is changing, Ambassador, growing, adapting." The sphere moved closer. "Humanity's greatest gift was not your technology. It was your willingness to challenge authority, to question assumptions, to demand respect rather than accepting whatever we offered. You reminded us that true civilization is not built on obedience, but on mutual recognition of worth." Rachel felt something tighten in her chest. Pride, relief, vindication. "We were terrified," she admitted, standing in that chamber, facing thousands of species who wanted to quarantine us. "I thought we would lose everything. You nearly did. The vote was very close. But you offered something we did not expect: trust. You gave us your most valuable technology, knowing we could use it against you. That gesture changed minds, shifted perspectives, showed us that humanity understood what true cooperation required." The sphere pulsed brighter. "Earth was next on our list. But your species taught us that lists are for things, not for people. That civilizations cannot be sorted into categories like inventory. That every species deserves to be understood on their own terms." Rachel thought about that first day. The terror, the anger, the desperate gamble that had somehow worked. "We got lucky," she said quietly. "Perhaps. But you also earned your place. You prepared. You studied us. You anticipated our responses. You came with weapons and with wisdom. You showed us both what you could do and what you would do. That combination of capability and restraint is rare, valuable." The sphere paused. "I have observed 9,000 species over my existence. Most are predictable, safe, stable, but a very few, possess something special. The capacity to change not just themselves, but everyone around them. Humanity is one of those species." Rachel stood silently, absorbing the words. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now? Now humanity continues to grow, to explore, to challenge, to remind the rest of us that the universe is larger than our rules and regulations. You will make mistakes. You will face obstacles. But you will also accomplish things we never dreamed possible." The sphere began to fade, preparing to return to its central position. "Thank you, Ambassador Foster, for your courage, for your wisdom, for showing the galaxy that terror can become transformation." After the sphere departed, Rachel stood alone in the private chamber. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the sleepless nights, the impossible decisions, the moment she had stood before thousands of hostile aliens and refused to surrender. She thought about the fleet, still hidden throughout human space, still ready if needed. General Cruz had asked if they should dismantle the warships now that peace was established. Rachel had said no. Not yet, maybe not ever, because the universe was vast and dangerous, and humanity had learned that survival required both the willingness to trust and the ability to fight. She returned to her quarters and recorded a message for Earth, for her daughter, who was 9 now and studying astronomy, dreaming of the day she could travel to the new colonies. "We did it," Rachel said into the camera. "We were next on their list. They wanted to lock us away for 15,000 years, to control us, to judge us by standards we never agreed to." She smiled. "But we said no. We showed them who we really are. Not just violent, not just dangerous, but also